Mattea up to the front. So many of you will be aware of Mattea because she's been in the club for a few years now and is studying at Newcastle, and we've sort of quite a lot of collaboration with the club in her studies, and so she's here to talk about part of that. So thanks, Mattea, and welcome.
Thanks everyone. Tonight I'm going to be just telling a little bit about my trip that I did to Northwest Australia. A couple of other club members went as well, Louise and Judy. So we went to get training in catching shorebirds, and I'll also talk about how that ties in with my PhD research here in Newcastle in the Hunter Estuary. The tale starts with the west coast of Australia. In particular, two locations, two sites, Roebuck Bay and 80 Mile Beach. They're both Ramsar wetlands. They were designated in 1990. And between these two sites, these two wetlands, they are home to around 500,000 shorebirds. So they are massively important and massively impressive sites. So 80 Mile Beach is 220 kilometres of uninterrupted beach. I put 220 k's in Google, and apparently that's about 136.7 miles. So it's much longer than 80 miles. But there must be a story, I didn't look it up. But yeah, white beaches, it attracts a lot of tourists, but it also attracts a lot of shorebirds and turtles. So we spent just under two weeks there, and we camped at an airplane station. In contrast, the other site we went to, Roebuck Bay, is red shores, red cliffs, and a bay as opposed to a long stretch of beach. In Northwest Australia, the tides are so high and such a great range that in the neap tide, it can be as low as 1 metre of a high tide, and in the spring high tides as high as 10.5 metres. So a big range of high tides, and that's part of what makes it so attractive to shorebirds, I believe. But it was particularly special for me to go back to Roebuck Bay because that's where I first learned about shorebirds. I did a stint as assistant warden there at the Broome Bird Observatory in 2019 and 2020. And I was very early in my birding experience, and so funnily I first saw more rarer birds like the common redshank and yellow chat before I saw the more common cattle egret. That could be another story another time. So those were the two sites. We spent about just over a week at Roebuck Bay. And so the Northwest Expedition is organised by the Australasian Way to Study group, so that's based in Victoria, but there's people from all over Australia and from overseas who go on this expedition. It's basically a 3-week trip to 80 Mile Beach and Roebuck Bay where we catch birds using cannon netting, put on metal bands and leg flags that are colour-coded and engraved. We take measurements, collect other data, and at the same time also going out and counting flocks and looking for leg flags. And they've been doing this yearly since about the late 1980s, so this is a massive, rich long-term data set, and it's also a really valuable opportunity for banders in training such as myself to go along and be a part of a very intensive experience. And so Louise, Judy and myself represented the Newcastle cohort that went on this expedition in 2022 in November. Let's see, maybe both of them in that picture. So I'll talk a bit about the process of cannon netting. Probably first I should explain a little bit about what cannon netting is. So it's to catch birds, you connect up cannons to the nets to use the power of the cannon to project it over the birds. And so there's ethics of safety, there's a highly trained group and qualified group of people. It's a very efficient way of catching a lot of birds, and you can control it quite well. So there's a range of different processes. The first one And the last one is the setup and pack up. And that has a range of different things that involves the setting up of the cannons and the nets, connecting the electrical wiring, setting up the hide through which those near the net can observe and call for safety and different things. And also the holding pens where the birds will go and the shade over that to keep the birds and all the people nice and cool in that time. And so we were put in groups and trained through all the different processes. We got to rotate around, so most of us got to experience most of the different tasks. It was all very, very well organised, like a military operation, very clockwork. And for the setup, we were taught two very particular knots, the clokage and the slip knot. Because there are very particular ways that you set up these things, particularly to tie up the shade there around the PVC pipes and the shade cloth. And it's been going for such a long time, it's just, yeah, there's a particular way you do it. So the next step is waiting. And this can be 30 minutes or 3 hours, depending on the day, how the birds are behaving, and if there's a bird of prey or a dog somewhere nearby causing havoc. So at Edinburgh Beach, we would do this generally in the cars, but on Roebuck Bay, it was more among the cliffs, hopefully under tree shade. It was generally much nicer to be in the car at Edinburgh Beach, kind of sheltered from the sun, as opposed to on Roebuck Bay, where we're just very exposed to the elements, where there's not really any protection from the sun or the rain. This photo, Louise will remember this, was when we're just smiling, after several hours of rain, putting up the cannon netting gear, all the different things and waiting to catch, and just relentless rain. And we didn't end up catching that day, so it's just a bit of a letdown overall. On another occasion, some of our group spent the waiting time of watching hermit crabs race. So, you know, everyone got involved, it was great, and no hermit crabs were harmed in this event. One day at Edinburgh Beach, Louise made the most of the waiting time to collect some samples for her research. So, good job. So the next step is, of course, the catching, the inevitable, hopeful event that we're preparing for, the whole reason we're there. So we would be waiting to hear on the radio, 3, 2, 1, fire, and then a bang, and then we run or drive to the site and follow the instructions of those who are in charge there. They tell us exactly what to do, when to do it, all very organised. And then we get the birds and we put them in the holding pens. So once we've got them in the holding pens, it's time for a little bit just to rehydrate, settle down, get into teams and get ready for the next step, which is the banding. So here's Judy with a redneck stint. So we'll put a metal band on them, and for broom it will be a yellow leg flag. It's not quite cold enough to put this jumper on, but all the leg flags are colour-coded according to the state or region of our flyway, the East Australasian Flyway, which goes up to Russia and China and Korea and Japan. And so it means that, you know, where they were caught, if you recite them even without catching them again. So we'll put those on, we'll take measurements. So we got to learn and practice all the different processes on a range of shorebirds. So great experience. And as part of that, we got to see other techniques that were relevant to our research in Newcastle. In particular, Marcel Claassen from the Deakin University was taking blood from shorebirds, and he demonstrated us how to do it with techniques that we are using here in Newcastle. And he also has provided us with some blood samples as well that we can use in our analyses. I myself banded 78 shorebirds from a range of different species, 10 different species, from the small birds such as the red-capped plovers, the redneck stints and the greater sand plovers, to the medium-sized birds like the ruddy turnstone, grey-tailed tattler, Terek sandpiper, great knot, red knot, and the larger birds like the bar-tailed godwit and an Australian pied oyster catcher. And several of these are shorebirds that we commonly get here in the Hunter Estuary as well, so it was very relevant for my research. I think one of the very special things about in Broome was coming across birds that hadn't been caught here first, that had been caught somewhere else, and so had a laying flag from another country like China. When we weren't doing that, weren't going out cannon netting, weren't cleaning the cannon netting equipment, we were going out looking for shorebirds, particularly rarities. While we were in Roebuck Bay, there was a ringed plover there. I think that's what it was. Multiple people went out multiple times to try and see it, and I think some people did have success, but I unfortunately did not. We also went out and counted shorebird flocks and looked for lake flags. And when we weren't doing that, we went out in the early morning to try and catch some bushbirds in different places, including neighbourhood birds and things. One of the good things about having such a large and diverse group in the expedition was that we got to learn a range of different techniques because everyone has a slightly different way of doing things. So it was, highly profitable. And then takes me to the tale of the east coast of Australia. I won't include a map because you kind of know where we are. But yeah, so my research, I'm doing a PhD studying shorebirds in the Hunter Estuary, and particularly looking at some of the threats to shorebirds that might affect their abilities to successfully migrate and breed, as the Hunter Estuary is one of the sites in Australia that's seeing greater declines in shorebirds than many other parts of Australia. And so my two fieldwork projects are looking at disturbance and pollution, and then I've got a couple of desktop studies. So I'll just give like a brief overview to both of those and then kind of explain the connection. So disturbance, I'm looking particularly at high tide because that's when shorebirds are most prone to disturbance. They're closer to humans. They can't go out and feed to replenish the energy that they spend while flying. So I was focusing on high tide sites in the Hunter Estuary. These were sites that the Bird Observers Club survey monthly, and I was looking to measure the level of disturbance. So I have 6 main sites. I haven't actually labelled them on the map, just dots. 6 main sites in the Hunter Estuary that I surveyed between 7 to 10 times. Millen's Pond and Fish Fry Flats on Ash Island, and then Stockton Sandspit, Tomago and Fullerton Cove Beach. And then I also surveyed a couple of times in Port Stephens, around Swan Bay. That's kind of the main areas. So between September 2022 and March 2023, I surveyed fairly well monthly, looking at doing 3 hours around high tide. And I had a lot of people help me with that, quite a few people in the club who came along and helped with the survey, writing, being eyes. It was great. So we were measuring, we were counting shorebirds, we were recording when they took flight and if we could see the reason why they took flight. And we were also recording any time we observed a potential disturbance. So it's not something that necessarily caused the birds to react, but that could, so to kind of get an idea of how much disturbance there is in their environment, as well as how much the birds take flight. So I'm still in the process of analysing this, but I just wanted to show you one very preliminary plot. So this is looking at the number of alarm flights at each site during each survey. So those 3 hours of surveys, the number of alarm flights in each survey. And I've broken it down into the types of disturbance. So we have natural disturbances, which are typically a bird of prey, but other disturbances that we would take note of were other birds such as ravens, animals like fox, dog, horse, cow, kangaroo, and if there was competition as well, because sometimes the bird would fly in response to another another shorebird. And then anthropogenic disturbances we classified as humans, vehicles, boats, aircraft, and train. Now what's in this graph isn't necessarily all these disturbances, because these were all the ones that we were taking note of, but that doesn't mean that the birds responded to all of those. But looking at the number of alarm flights of the ones that were anthropogenic, so anthropogenic is in pink and natural is in green, so I apologise if anyone's red-green colourblind. But you see that Stockton Sandspit has the highest number of anthropogenic, so human alarm flights, up to 6 in one survey during 1 3-hour amount. And then Hexham Swamp and Tomago had quite high, and a range of the number of alarm flights that were in response to natural disturbances. And then Hexham Swamp, we also reported a lot of our alarm flights when we didn't know, we couldn't see what was the cause of it. So yeah, I'm still continuing the analysis, but that's kind of, one of the things that we have found. And I just want to do a quick thank you to all those who have assisted in my surveys, doing 3+ hours in all sorts of environments. I really appreciate it. And just a little aside to that, during one of the disturbance surveys at Tomago, it was quite late in the evening, about 6:15, and we saw 11 eastern curlew fly in. And this is not that common for Tomago, so it's very exciting. I texted Anne and Lindsay, and where they'd landed was about the same place that we'd seen green shank before, and where sharp-tailed sandpipers tend to kind of this stretch where they seem to all lie. So it seemed like a potential good place to put in a camera trap and just see what we got, particularly thinking about at night. So I'll come back to that a little later and explain why I've got it in here. The other fieldwork chapter that I'm looking at is pollution. So given the industrial history of the hunter estuary, particularly in the last 100 or so, 150 years, potentially a lot of pollutants have gone into the environment, and then this could go into the food that the shorebirds are eating, and maybe this could be one of the contributing factors to why there's such a disproportionate decline here compared to other parts of Australia. So I'm focusing on the Bartite godwit and looking to measure metal levels in the food that the Bartite godwit is eating, and also metal levels in the godwit through their feathers and blood. Collecting the invertebrates involves going out in the field, getting muddy. Really appreciate my volunteers like Tyler, who have gone out and helped me with that. There's snails, little crustaceans, there's worms, all sorts of things. So, but yeah, this looks okay, right? It gets a lot muddier, particularly if it's me. But yeah, great experience. And it kind of comes out in the wash. And here I'm we tried out at Tomago, and so that's sitting through the mud, looking for the little things that are living in the mud that the birds might be eating. So we went to Tomago in different places, but the main sites in targeting Bartite godwits, the main sites are Fullerton Cove, Curlew Point, and Stockton Sandspit, as Louise's research has found that these are the main sites where Bartite godwits are foraging in the hunter estuary. So how does that link into the Northwest Expedition? Well, we're wanting to measure metal levels in birds, and to do that we need to catch them. And another big project that I'm a part of is we're looking to track the movements of shorebirds around the hunter estuary to get to know what sites are important for them. And so being able to catch birds is important for this. We have telemetry towers set up around the hunter estuary and Port Stephens, and so we put radio tags on the birds and learn their movements. And so going on this expedition was a great opportunity to learn different techniques, to network with people, to bounce ideas around. So our banding team is led by Judy and Greg, and there's Tom Clark, Rob Kite, Sophie and Drew, yeah, a whole bunch of other people that are involved in it. Oh, Louise and Andrea should mention as well. Yeah, but a whole bunch of people who are involved in it and volunteers with helping with this. But yeah, we got back from Broome. Louise had an idea. She went out and scouted, and we tried something different. It worked. We've been catching a lot of birds since, and so we've been able to get data on medals and on movement. So yeah, we've been able to get blood and feather samples for barred godwits, and also a range of different species that are either migratory and coastal, like barred godwits, or a migratory and generalist, or a resident and coastal, or resident and generalist. So we can compare the metals in the feathers and blood of barred godwits and species that are similar and different to them in the area. And I'll also, so this map, I went on the, there's a Facebook page where they look at, you can report lake flags and photos of lake flags. And the Bird Club has been great in, I think, reporting to Judy. If you see our birds around and photograph them, it's really great to get that information of their movements. But I went on this site and I looked to see where lake flags from the different states in Australia have been reported. And the East Coast birds, so Victoria, Queensland, and our one international sighting from Newcastle, have been resighted in Japan. But West Australia, from what I've seen, hasn't been. But Queensland, Victoria, and West Australia have all been resighted in South Korea. So potentially they'll all end up at the same site, but maybe our birds take a similar route to the Victoria and Queensland birds, so a more similar pathway than the West Australian birds. So if our birds are exposed to metals more along their pathway, we'd expect that their metal levels in their feathers would be similar to Queensland. I've also got some feathers from Queensland. But if it's because of our local contamination, then we'd expect them to be different. And we can also compare them to West Australia. So yeah, I'm still in the process of the analysis of that, but that's what I intend to look at. I said I'd come back to the photo. So this camera is placed exactly where we saw the eastern curlews, and I think you can probably tell in this photo that these are barred godwits. There's about 30 of them at night, and the bird that I've circled in the middle has a little line dangling in the back of its tail. That's an antenna. And so while we can't read the lake flags, and we didn't have any telemetry towers at Tomago at the time that this photo was taken, we know that has to be one of our birds. So we got to know that where we caught them at Stockton, they moved to Tomago, and the telemetry towers at Ash Island also picked up barred godwits. So we're getting to know a bit of their movements through that. But I think that this photo of godwits at Tomago just reinforces how important the site of Tomago is for many shorebird species, even if the ones that you get during the daytime are potentially different, because not many barred godwits have been surveyed at Tomago during the day over the past 20 years. So that's kind of, that's it. I'd just like to acknowledge the different collaborations and funding bodies, and my supervisor, Jean. Andrew's here tonight. And so that's the story of how a trip to the West Coast helped our research on the East Coast to catch birds, to study metals and movement.
Thank you, Mattea. Yeah, great talk, as I was expecting and hoping. So thanks for sharing part of your experiences with us.